Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Serena and I am your go-to guide for all things sensitive. Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking about the difference between anxiety and overwhelm. And this is just going to be a super quick short video, so let's get into it. Okay guys, so you may hear all the time like this word anxiety has like completely blown up over like the past probably 5 to 10 years. And you know, like we use the word anxiety and anxious for like almost everything now. Anything that's like uncomfortable, it's like, oh, that's giving me anxiety, that's making me anxious, you know, like that's just how everybody talks now. But we don't actually talk about the main differences between anxiety and overwhelm. And this is especially crucial for highly sensitive people and empaths, because highly sensitive people and empaths are both going to be more prone to anxiety as well as overwhelm. And a lot of times we think that these two things are the same thing, and this is exactly why I'm making a video on it, because they are two very, very, very different emotional states. So actually, a lot of this information that I'm going to be talking about today came from Brené Brown's book, The Atlas of the Heart. So she does an amazing job in this book of really, like, she calls it like a roadmap. So she really road maps all of these emotions and, you know, where do they come from in our body? You know, are they traits or states, which I'll get into a little bit later, and like what happens to us when we're experiencing them, okay? So I'm going to use some examples that she used in that book while we're iterating these differences as well. So let's start with anxiety, because it's so popular and everybody seems to have anxiety now. So anxiety is not just fear, right? Fear is an emotion. So anxiety can be described as a trait or a state. So there are some people, like highly sensitive people and empaths, who are going to be more prone to being an anxious person. So there's two differences, right? There's a feeling of anxiety, which is a passing state. And then there is a trait, which is inherent in the body, in the personality, to be more prone to feeling that state or to be in that state for longer periods of time, which then becomes a personal trait. So especially HSPs and empaths are going to be more prone to being anxious people. Why? Because of the fact that they actually take in so much stimulus on a regular basis. So let's take empaths for example. So empaths, and I actually have a video I'll link here of signs you might be an empath, so that if you are not certain, you can always look that up. So empaths are going to be people that are taking in stimulus that's non-physical. I'll also link a video right here that's the difference between an empath and an HSP, so if you're interested in that as well. So empaths are going to be taking in all sorts of non-physical stimulus. A lot of times this means emotions and energy. So because of that, empaths and HSPs both tend to grow up feeling more anxious than your average person, because they're noticing things that other people aren't speaking to. This causes the psyche of this type of person to constantly question the validity of their own reality. So let's take an example for a moment. Let's say that you're sitting as a child and you start to notice like some tension going on, and you're kind of looking between your parents and they're not really saying anything, right? They're just like cooking dinner or sweeping or doing some activity, you know, but you feel some sort of heaviness or like a tension, and you're looking from person to person and being like, okay, I wonder what's going on here. And then maybe as a kid you say, what's wrong? And they say nothing. There's your moment right there. It can be as simple as that. That causes them to then question their own reality. This puts us into a state of anxiety because of the fact we can't really understand what we're feeling, or we start to feel that what we're feeling isn't actually there, or it isn't actually true, which causes us to be in a heightened state of anxiety or fear because we can't understand what's coming into us. Now, the same thing is true for an HSP, although an HSP's physical body and nervous system functions differently. So this is because of depth of processing. And if you want to learn more about this, I will also link a video up here to signs of being an HSP. And so the depth of processing within an HSP is pretty extreme. So this is something where the brain and the nervous system take in more information, and especially very small, subtle informations. So this leads to burnout very quickly. This leads to overwhelm very quickly, which we'll talk about in the next part of the video. And this causes the nervous system of the HSP to be at a heightened state. So this is why most HSPs also are going to be prone to be anxious people, not just feeling anxiety, but holding that within their bodies for an extended amount of time, which turns it into a trait. You know, it's something that they have inherent in them. And that is because HSPs have to spend a lot of their time calming their nervous system back down and soothing themselves out of a flight or fight mode, which tends to be triggered by states of anxiety. So going into overwhelm. So the main difference between anxiety and overwhelm, right, is anxiety is like this nagging feeling of like uncertainty. And like we discussed before, it can be a trait or it can be a state, where overwhelm is only going to be a state. So nobody is going to exist in overwhelm for extended periods of time. One, because psychologically, if that happened, there would be like major repercussions. Because a lot of times we think, oh, I'm overwhelmed, but really we're just anxious. Overwhelm is literally like completely upended to a point of not even being able to function. Like when you ask somebody that's overwhelmed, like what they need to solve what's going on right now, they will not even be able to tell you. That's how much they cannot function. So overwhelmed is not like anxiety, where anxiety we can tend to usually think pretty clearly. Now, if you are going into a panic attack, that would be moving from anxiety into like an overwhelm, because in a panic attack we can't think clearly. We go into this major reaction of fight or flight mode, and we start noticing it in our heart palpitations, or in our breathing, or in our blood circulations, everything like that. So overwhelm is going to be where a person cannot cognize even how to make themselves feel better. So usually this is going to look like a mental breakdown. This is going to look like a panic attack. This is going to look like just spontaneously like just crying and having to just walk away from whatever it is they might be doing in that moment. So overwhelm is a state of just complete breakdown. And the reason why we talk about this as well with empaths and HSPs, we see this triggered a lot in empaths during conflict. So if there is a large crowd, right, and you throw an empath into a large crowd, and maybe there's a fight or there's a conflict, the empath a lot of times will have no choice but to just break down. And so a lot of people will externalize this as like, oh, you're just being dramatic, or now you have to make it about you because of, something's going on over there, so you got to make it about you and start crying. But no, it's not like that at all. It's actually that the empath is absorbing and feeling all of the different emotions within the crowd. So maybe they're feeling their own fear, they're feeling the angriness of the people in the conflict, they're feeling the restlessness of the people around them, and it's so much emotional stimulus, they have no choice but to just break down. And so that is going to be a state of overwhelm, when there is no functioning of the mental processes whatsoever. Now, HSPs might be a little bit different. They may also break down in emotional situations like that, but they're going to be more prone to breaking down with the external stimulus. So you hear this all the time with HSP overwhelm. This is like such a common thing for HSPs, especially if we spend an extended amount of time in that fight or flight mode or in that anxious mode. So I know for myself, 2 or 3 different times in my life I've struggled with adrenal fatigue, and I will make a video on that coming up here, but I haven't made it yet, so look out for that, because adrenal fatigue is so common for HSPs. Especially because what happens with adrenal fatigue is our body is constantly producing cortisol and stress hormones to combat the heightened nervous system. And so when our nervous system is heightened for too long and we can't make ourselves calm down, we can't bring ourselves back into a regulated state, what ends up happening is our body is just not able to produce it anymore. So especially for me, being a female, it makes your hormones completely out of whack. There's all kinds of weird symptoms associated with it, but this can accompany after being in a state of overwhelm. So if your body is triggered and your nervous system is fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, and you come to this state of overwhelm, which would be, to me, as I would describe it, as like it comes to a head, right? Being in this fight or flight mode for an extended period of time comes to a head in this state of overwhelm, where you literally just cannot function. And then what will happen a lot of times for HSPs is they'll have to just go sleep for like a few days in order to like even try and get their bodies to come back to a state of calm or a state of rest. But overwhelm is going to be this place of, I can't even tell you what I need right now. I can't even explain to you what I need right now, because of the very fact that it's not there. It's just not there. So that was our video for today, guys. That was the differences between anxiety and overwhelm, and why that is so important for all HSPs, empaths, and sensitive people to know. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Comment down below if you've had any issues with any of this before. I'd love to hear your stories and what goes on for you in the sensitive world. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Big love, Serena.